I secretly opened a tattoo parlor in our garage and kept it from my dad cop. That day, I was flipping through our crime news feeds, waiting for another client. Wow, there's a maniac in the city. What an ugly face. At this point, the door creaked. I turned around and froze. Beard, earrings, everything was exactly as on the photo robot from the news. Wow, cool! My detective mind immediately went into the game. The man did not introduce himself but only extended to me his hand. There in the column were tattoos and crossed out women's names. Damn, why are they all crossed out? I had to cross out the last one. Lucy. My favorite name. It was my neighbor's name. The most beautiful girl in the world. I was in love with her for years. Yep, I was only 13 and she was 19. So what? Because of my fascination with detectives, I had almost no friends and everyone laughed at me. But cops actually did not cope. Here, there was a maniac in the city. I would catch him, and Lucy would want to date me right away. My hands shook a little under the stark gaze that the bearded. He asked me to finish as soon as possible. I was even more terrified from this calm intonation. He behaved like nothing happened. Final touch, and it's ready. I wanted to expose this freak and ask if the entire county police were looking for him. But someone went into the garage. I turned around. It was Lucy. But she didn't even look at me and headed to this man and called him Max. So, okay, now I knew his name. She hugged him, saying she missed him. And then she naughtily added, "You like hanging out with kids more than with me?" What? She's talking about me, isn't she? And then it came to me. She dated this Max guy. But why then did he just cross out her name? I was stunned. Lucy led him by the hand to the exit. Max said he needed to go into the store and that a surprise would await her in the evening. They left, and I was paralyzed by the thought that Max wanted to deal with Lucy. Looked like she was the next victim of a mad maniac. I discreetly followed Max. He headed to the sports store. Weird. I was walking between the rows trying to find him, and then I saw Max picking a baseball bat. Now I've got you. I took out the phone to get a photo proof, but the click of my camera was heard by the entire store. Max turned around too and moved quickly to the counter, which I hid behind. My heart was popping out of my chest. What happens if this Hulk finds out about me? But then Max was distracted by the seller. I rushed away and ran to Lucy's house. I'll save her and she'll know what I really am. And those people who laughed at me and my dad and the whole city too. But on the doorstep I slowed down. I thought I feared talking to her even more than I feared a mad maniac. Come on, you can do it, I said to myself and knocked. Lucy opened the door and immediately asked, "What do you need?" I blushed and babbled that her boyfriend was a maniac. Lucy laughed, stroked me on the cheek and said I was cute, but shouldn't meddle in people's lives. Lucy, you will change your mind when you see what your boyfriend was buying at the store. I got the phone out, but Lucy asked not to spoil the surprise and immediately slammed the door. I went home and saw the police car in the yard. My dad came back from duty. Unfortunately, I didn't have him as cool a cop as Sherlock Holmes, and I questioned whether I should tell him about Max, even more so than Dad would know about my underground tattoo parlor. But Lucy's life was at stake. I went up to my dad and told him everything. Surprisingly, he was cool about it, but said I needed to watch detective movies less. He also added that it was illegal to open a tattoo parlor at my age and that I should wrap things up with it. I knew so. He always forbid me everything. But after a little pause, he mysteriously added that he had already seen my album with tattoos and that I was talented with it, but only in drawing. An investigation should be handled by professionals. Afterwards, he promised that he would run this Max through the system tomorrow and flopped onto the couch watching TV. Suddenly, there was a roar of a motorcycle outside the window. I looked out and saw that it was Max's bike. He stopped by for Lucy, now took her somewhere. I need to catch up with him. I ran so hard that I was blacking out, constantly losing sight of them, but still I got it. The bike was parked outside an abandoned cafe, and sounds of bumps and screams were heard from the backyard. I grabbed a stick, walked around the cafe, and looked cautious from behind the corner. What's going on here? Max for some reason had his eyes blindfolded and he had already swung his bat. Oh no! And then I noticed a piñata, a ball toy stuffed with candy. Hold on a second. What does this all mean? At this point my dad called me. Max turned around on the sound of the ringing and oh damn, at 3 jumps he was nearby and grabbed me by the hood. I dangled stupidly over the ground until I fell. Max said he was going to take me home now. Max asked Lucy to wait for him at the lodge house. He forcefully put me on the bike and whispered ominously that I had prevented him from saying goodbye to Lucy forever. What? He does not even hide that he wants to finish her off. I need more evidence. And then I noticed Max's cell phone sticking out of his pocket. I gently tried to get it, but Max yelled for me to hold on tightly. We sharply slowed down at the intersection. I rolled off the bike, allegedly clinging to Max's jacket. A bruised elbow, but I still got his phone. We drove up to the house. Seeing my dad, I immediately ran to him. Dad, arrest him! He admitted that he would want to finish Lucy. But instead, my dad just locked me in the room and said I was under house arrest. I wasn't going to give up so easy. And most importantly, I already had a solid evidence, Mike's cell phone. And indeed, it was full of chats with girls. There was no time to think, so I opened the window and carefully climbed out. I needed to save Lucy. In his text messages, there were coordinates to the guest house by the lake, which Max spoke about. But it was a 2-hour drive. How do I get there? There were no taxis at night. And then my dad's car caught my eyes. I could find myself in prison for this, but I was ready to take a chance. Lucy's life mattered more. I got in the car and wanted to start it, but accidentally turned on the siren. Damn, not that button! My dad stormed out right away and ran to me screaming. I quickly started the car and hit the gas. I'll save Lucy. I'll reveal Max, and you'll understand everything, Dad. 2 hours later, I was already near the lake and left the car away so I could not be noticed. I saw in the movies that they did so, but my legs refused to go. I exhaled. If I end up dead today, then at least I will be remembered as a hero. I rushed to the house, but someone grabbed me from behind, clutching my mouth. It was Max. Terrified, I tried to break out, but he only squeezed me harder. He started whispering some nonsense into my ears. Turns out Lucy was after him, and now we were both in danger. I didn't believe a word. As soon as Max's grip loosened, I yelled with all my might, "Lucy, save yourself!" And then she appeared. Sloped hair, mad look, bat in hand. "Go to the house," she told Max. And he, turning pale, went to the door. I was so glad she was alive, but Lucy hissed to me, "Where did you come from, little brat?" She grabbed my hand and dragged me inside the house. I didn't understand anything. Locking up Max, she dragged me into the next room. It was not possible to break out. Lucy held my hands tightly. Tying me to a chair, she, as insane, repeated that she was sure of Max's love and he decided to dump her. She wasted so much time, got rid of all his girlfriends, and she was about to dump her? That's it. Now he would pay for her suffering. So was Lucy a maniac? That thought made me shiver. Lucy left. And from the next room there were shouts and rumble. I had to do something. Tightly tied up, I could only make the chair rickety in the hope that it would fall and break. I knew this sometimes worked in detectives. I pushed myself with my feet and fell on my back. The chair turned out to be strong. Tied to a chair, I still tried to approach the door. I hardly opened it with my foot and crawled into the room where Max was. I started hitting the door with my foot, and in the end, the tree cracked. Through the slit, I saw Lucy's enraged face. "Max, run!" I tried to scream, but Max didn't hear me. He was passed out. "Lucy, what did you do with him?" Lucy dramatically opened the door. "You already know too much, jerk." I squeezed my eyes shut in terror. Suddenly, there were sirens. Finally, police! Lucy tried to escape, but was quickly apprehended by police officers. My dad also walked among them. It was strange, but Dad looked so cool. Lucy was immediately detained, and Dad untied me and said I had just saved Max's life. I was so grateful to my dad for help. But how did he find me? It turned out that all police cars were equipped with beacons, so it wasn't difficult. On the way home, Dad said I had a flair for criminals, just like he had in his youth. I didn't understand anything. But what about the photo robot from the news? It was Max. Dad bursted out laughing and said all the beardies were similar. I had to be careful when I blamed someone. A couple weeks later, Dad caught the real maniac, and Lucy turned out to have done nothing of that to Max's girls. She only intimidated them by forcing them to break up with him. So soon I closed the tattoo parlor and immersed in the cases. I decided to only draw during my spare time, and for now, I am actively preparing for admission to the police academy. And one day Max came to my house. We hugged like old friends. After all, we've been through so much together. And then he said he came for a new tattoo, and even though I didn't do it anymore, Max convinced me, saying that it was very important to him. I asked which name we would tattoo this time. Max replied briefly, "Yours." I was the only reason he still believed in people, would never forget how I saved him, and girls dumped him all the time. He doesn't know anything. I told him Lucy was to blame for breaking up with the girls. Max was stunned. He said he had already practically lost faith in himself, but now he understood why all the girls dumped him. "Thank you, mates," Max uttered. Then I admitted to him that I was wrong too, when I mistook him for a maniac, and when I thought it was possible to catch criminals, as in movies. And now I decided to change my life. I enrolled in a police academy and attended class after school. After that, Max severely shook my hands. He told me that he believed that one day I would definitely be a real cop.